Chapter 71 Yun Ming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother, there's big news. A beautiful young girl who was probably only 12 years old, had her hair in a ponytail, ran into a bedroom, opening the door directly, revealing a luxurious room where a handsome black-haired young man with no clothes on lay with two beautiful middle-aged women hugging him on each side. The two were also naked, and kept regaling the young man with various compliments, continuously swearing that they loved him. The sight made the young girl blush, while the three people in the bedroom were stunned to the point of almost jumping. They hurriedly put on their clothes. "Chire, what are you doing?" The young man was clearly disturbed by this situation. He could not help but yell at the girl even though the latter was his own biological sister. The girl, Yun Chire, pouted slightly from being yelled at, but she was still able to calm down and say what she wanted to say to the youth. "Bro, just now the Ice Prince, who was recently rumored to be the son of the Ice Goddess, came to the city with the entire Ice Palace disciples. He came riding the legendary holy beast, Pegasus. Mother told me to tell you about this and welcome the prince. If you can befriend him, your path to becoming father's heir will be even greater. You may not have heard the latest news, but the Ice Prince also holds the title of Young King of the Elf Kingdom, considered to be of equal authority to the Elf Queen. The Queen herself issued a decree for his position." "What? Is that true?" The young man, Yun Ming, was stunned and excited. He got off the bed in a hurry, running towards Yun Chire, who was waiting outside his room. Come, we have to leave now," he said, grabbing his sister's hand before stepping into the living room. At the same time, he shouted, "Everyone, gather here, and gather all the best things I have, we're going to welcome the Ice Prince." His voice echoed loudly, startling all the servants. Little did the people of the city know that even one of the Blue Cloud God's sons wanted to befriend Seal. Actually, that man did have a problem, because he had a rival fighting over the inheritance with him, his own brother, who had a different mother from him but was also the son of the Blue Cloud God. Their rivalry was actually very serious, as there was fierce enmity between the clans behind their respective mothers. The enmity between the two clans eventually descended to the Blue Cloud God's two wives before eventually descending to their respective sons. In the beginning, the conflict was quite balanced because in addition to equal clan strength, Yun Ming and his brother Yun Shao also barely differed in talent. Their cultivations were always the same overall. If one of them broke through, the other would follow in no time. The real problem only appeared recently, where Yun Shao suddenly improved very quickly. His cultivation suddenly rose to the hegemon 5th stage after only a short while at the 4th stage. Yun Ming, who had just broken through to the 4th stage, was naturally unable to catch up because he hadn't even fully adapted to his new strength. Seal didn't know anything about them, that there was some sort of drama within the Blue Cloud God's family. He and the others kept moving on the city's main street, looking for a good place to use as an inn. Although he could follow the directions where the key indicated to find the tomb now, but he chose not to be in a hurry, as he was quite enjoying the atmosphere in this town. He wanted to relax and look around for a few hours first. After all, this was his first trip to the outside world. The starting point of his life was on the Fire Mountain continent. It was a boring continent since he arrived on the Ice continent, but actually, the Ice continent could also be said to be a rather boring continent. First, the weather was always cold, and it was also a place that was indeed too calm, very little conflict. The Holy Cloud continent, on the other hand, was completely different. It's a continent with a comfortable environment plus more freedom, so the people seem much more active. There were actually many sects or clans that had come to see him. Perhaps they wanted to greet him, but when they saw the Ice Palace's entourage, they instantly lost their nerve, thinking that they were not even worthy of greeting, only worthy of standing aside to watch. Hua! 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 Suddenly, a new entourage came from the very center of the city. This entourage was huge, followed by many great cultivators and giant beasts. They shook the land, scaring the people so much that they jumped to the side faster than lightning coming down the land. Seal, who was enjoying the ride, quickly noticed them. He thought this entourage was much grander than him. Of course, that was only what was visible on the surface. Quality-wise, his entourage was far above them, as there was a saint beast, a peerless genius like Mu Ishue, and many other geniuses. People would stare at his entourage longer than the entourage in front. Hua! The entourage finally stopped when it arrived about 30 meters away from Seal's group. The leader was a young man in his early 20s, with short black hair and riding a fierce-looking red tiger. He was handsome, of course, enough to attract the interest of most of the women in this city. Next to him was a young girl with skin like snow, sitting on a large rabbit. The young man then dismounted from his tiger, stepping about 3 meters forward before cupping his fist at Seal. "I am Yun Ming, son of the Blue Cloud God, come to welcome the Ice Prince, Miss Mu, and the outstanding disciples of the Ice Palace. If you don't mind, please come to my residence. I will provide whatever you need," he said in a soft but far-reaching voice. His gaze at Seal was also filled with admiration, especially when he saw Seal's hands hugging Mu Ishue's slender waist. "Seal, this man is a scoundrel who often utilizes his father's name for his own gain. And he's also a perverted man who keeps flirting with women. He doesn't even hesitate to flirt with his friends' mothers," Mu Ishue whispered to Seal, telling him about the young man. Chapter 72 Chat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seal did not change his expression because of Mu Ishue's words. He just continued to stare at the young man. That he was an asshole was actually obvious. He saluted him and Mu Ishue, but his gaze occasionally glanced at Mu Ishue's face and neck, even once glancing at her thigh. It seemed that he was mesmerized by her to the point of not being able to control himself. When Seal activated the power of the eyes of heaven to observe him, he found many kiss marks on his body, just hidden under his clothes. Seal needed no explanation to know that he was a high-level rogue, similar to him. Of course, just because he was an asshole, that didn't mean Seal would slap him, especially when he smiled at him. Seal also didn't think a bastard would be his enemy. It was possible that they could become good friends because of their similarities. The most important thing was not to cross the boundaries that should not be crossed. If he was fascinated by Mu Ishue and the other Ice Palace disciples, it only meant that he was a normal man. All men would be fascinated by them. This man just happened to grow up with great courage because of his background. Before responding to his offer, Seal also looked at the young girl with her hair in 2 pigtails. Another amazing thing about her was her round eyes that were bright blue, not the blue of the sky or the ocean, but a unique blue that seemed to be somewhere in between. She also stared at Seal, seemingly amazed by his striking face with white hair. Young girls like her did tend to easily admire rare things. After that, Seal finally responded to Yun Ming. "Sure, I happen to look for a lodging, but haven't found one yet. I'm sure you can provide a better place for all of us," he said, which immediately made Yun Ming smile happily. "Ha ha ha, definitely, that's for sure. My father owns the best buildings in this city. I can naturally provide the best lodging for you, Prince." Yun Ming then returned to his tiger, ordering the group behind him to turn around and open the way. They were as obedient as a flock of sheep, quickly turning around then going to the left and right side so that a path opened up between them. "Prince, please." Yun Ming pointed his hand forward, allowing Seal to move. Seal didn't beat around the bush either. He tapped Pegasus on the shoulder, signaling her to move. The winged white horse then took a step forward, followed by the others. She looked indifferent to her surroundings while her deep and majestic aura made even Yun Ming's red tiger almost bow its head to her. Yun Ming ordered the tiger to follow beside Seal as he wanted to chat with him. Seal's eyes looked up at him as he moved beside him, showing him an expression as if he was the type that was open to chatting. After taking a few gulps of his saliva, Yun Ming said, "Prince, if I may know, is there a reason you came to this continent?" "Oh, I certainly don't dare to have any ill will towards you. I'm just curious so that I can give you a favor." When realizing his words seemed like he was too inquisitive, Yun Ming hastily explained that he only wanted to help. Quite surprisingly, Yun Chire, who was following beside Yun Ming, suddenly added, "Prince, my brother has many friends who are willing to help him throughout this continent. He is also very kind to each of his friends. Don't worry, he will definitely help you wholeheartedly, even ready to sacrifice his life." Her voice is soft and sweet, making one think that she is telling the truth. And because of her age, people would hardly think that she was lying or would think that she didn't know how to lie yet. Yun Ming glanced at her for a moment when he heard that, looking like he wanted to cough. Even Mu Yixue showed a strange expression, probably not believing that a little girl could say so many words to help raise her brother's name. Of course, this was also proof that the girl was the type who supported her brother wholeheartedly plus cared deeply for him. Seal smiled at her and casually said, "Yeah, there is indeed something I'm looking for, but let's talk about that later." He wasn't worried about saying it, but right now there was no need, so it didn't need to be said. Plus, when he opened the tomb, it would probably cause a certain phenomenon so that the others would know that there was an open tomb. It would usually always be like that, so key holders who were afraid of being exposed would hide when opening the tomb. However, Seal naturally had no such worries. Since Seal didn't want to say it now, Yun Ming had no other choice but to change the topic. "Then, Prince, is there anything you like? Food, wine, music, or beautiful girls? I can definitely bring them all to you," he said, full of confidence. Only, right after he said that, he suddenly got a piercing look from Mu Yixue, a look that made his heart seem to stop beating. Damn, why did I say that? He couldn't help but curse himself, realizing that offering Seal pretty girls would probably make Seal happy, but at the same time would make Mu Yixue very angry. Seal laughed as he watched Mu Yixue's reaction. He moved his fingers around her waist to keep her calm. Afterward, she answered Yun Ming's words. "Those girls are unnecessary, but the others don't matter. After all, there's such a beautiful woman in my arms, why would I look for another?" He placed his face in Mu Yixue's hair as he said that, creating a scene that left Yun Ming somewhat mesmerized. The thing was that Mu Yixue was indeed too beautiful, so he couldn't help but wonder how the sensation of hugging her from behind would be. Unfortunately, even the son of a god like him didn't have the chance to experience that. Even if he gained an inheritance from his father in his cultivation sword, it would still be the same. Yun Ming then replied, "Oh, yes, alright, I will bring the best of them to you." Chapter 73 Dead from Madness. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Mei Ao and He Ling had naturally already arrived in Holy Cloud City. The two of them even saw how Yun Ming greeted Seal so graciously, making them unable to help but be envious because here there weren't even commoners greeting them since they were completely unrecognized by anyone. Actually, if the Mei clan moved to the Holy Cloud continent, they would also be one of the top factions, but still, in the entire realm of life, there were too many factions that were on par with them. In the territory of a god, only the factions of other gods could earn a welcome. And Seal was from one of the most powerful god factions. Wherever he went, he was destined to get a big welcome even if it was in another realm. I heard that the conflict between Yun Ming and Yun Xiao is getting more intense, the latter seems to be escalating quickly, possibly gaining support from the other side. It's possible that he could become an enemy to that bastard if he knows that he has the key to the Mountain King's tomb. He Ling said after a moment of gnashing his teeth. Mei Ao glanced at him, but in truth he felt somewhat unconvinced. Although he heard that Yun Xiao was the type of man who was very decisive, not even hesitating to fight people with big backgrounds, fighting Seal was still something else. He Ling knew Mei Ao's hesitation, so he continued, "If he feels threatened because the Ice Prince is close to Yun Ming coupled with the potential of obtaining the Mountain King's secrets, it could be that he acts against the Ice Prince. If it were me, I wouldn't be afraid. After obtaining everything, I would hide and cultivate secretly until I was strong enough to ignore the Ice Goddess. It can definitely be done with the secret. The Mountain King failed only because he was too reckless. When hearing He Ling's speculation, Mei Ao couldn't help but show a serious expression, thinking that it was a possible thing. After all, chance sometimes made people fear nothing. It was just that, he thought of something. Then what do we get out of it all, he asked. This question was actually a bit late because he was also too angry. But since the key wasn't his to begin with, he calmed down sooner. After being able to think rationally, he began to have doubts about doing all this. And his question was enough to make the furious He Ling freeze with his mouth open. He was not only surprised, but also confused as the same question kept popping up in his head. Yes. What would he get when he was already even out of the game? What he could do now was nothing more than spreading rumors and hoping Seal was harmed by them. Just that, just really that. As he continued to think about that, He Ling's head felt as if it wanted to explode. He started to get frustrated and his aura started to get chaotic, disturbing the people around because he was actually not weak either. Ha! In the end, he actually screamed, so loud that Seal, Yun Ming, and the others could hear it. Commotion was common in this city, so no one really cared. However, Seal recognized the owner of the voice, so she couldn't help but stop Pegasus, making the others stop as well. Quickly, Seal found the figures of He Ling and Mei Ao. The latter became panicked because he had already been found by Seal. He Ling, on the other hand, became even crazier. Whoosh! He then jumped onto the top of a very tall building. While pointing his hand at Seal, he shouted, "That bastard, the Ice Prince has stolen the key to the Mountain King's tomb from me. The key is in his hands now, if you want the secrets of the Mountain King, you can take it from him." What he said instantly made the atmosphere of the city freeze. Even Yun Ming opened his mouth and thought, Mountain King's tomb, there really is its key. He spontaneously glanced at Seal who showed no expression but calmness, and that instantly made him tremble. He was trembling because the thought of jumping towards Seal came to him. Fortunately he was still rational and could control his thoughts. No, I'll just be the Ice Prince's friend no matter what happens. He quickly made up his mind, not wanting to change his mind. After which, he shouted loudly at He Ling, "Evil creature, how dare you accuse the Ice Prince of stealing from you? Even if the Ice Prince has that key, it must be his. Such an extraordinary thing can only fall to a great being like the Ice Prince. Everyone, kill this evil creature to earn my thanks." Whoosh! 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 Instantly after Yun Ming shouted, dozens of people leapt towards He Ling, each one stronger than him. Only an instant later, the place where He Ling was directly turned into a blaze. Ha! He Ling's scream echoed out and the pain seemed to be enough to snap him out of the madness because after that he suddenly shouted, please spare me, no, damn it, how dare you, I am the young master of the He clan in the East Wind continent, my grandfather is a second-stage demigod. This situation made Seal smile. He enjoyed it very much, enjoyed his power where he was always considered right and always the winner. Only, he was also made aware of how much of an asshole the man beside him was. He was actually asking people to take action just to get his thanks. Who does he think he is? Seal thought that if in such a situation, he would say that Smee would reward those who helped him. A while later, the situation finally calmed down. He Ling had nothing left but his name, even his soul had become nothingness. However, after that was done, people couldn't help but stare at Seal again. Some even seemed very interested in coming closer and perhaps saying something. Sometimes, people would forget who they were and who they were dealing with when they were filled with greed. Therefore, they needed to be constantly reminded. Take one step closer, and I guarantee you and all those related to you will die. Seal finally spoke, taking out the silver key with the dragon's crest, hanging it on his finger while looking at the people who seemed very interested in doing something. Chapter 74 Story You are listening at NovelFull.audio. When they saw the key, people's greed instantly increased, but they couldn't help but tremble at Seal's words. His voice did not have a domineering aura, but the memory of the ice goddess could be something more terrifying than just seeing a god in person. No one dared to move, and they quickly realized that they were only seeking death because the winged horse Seal was riding was enough to kill them all. The problem was that they were all just hegemons, no demigods. Of course, there were demigods in this city, but they only watched silently from hidden places. Compared to those hegemons, those demigods were truly worth watching out for because of their great power. Even Seal would be worried if they made a move in the condition that he did not have a protector around him. They could not kill him, but there was no problem if they just took something from him because the protective formation created by the Ice Goddess and the Elf Queen only activated when the formation owner received an attack that could cause him injury. In the respective cases of his hand being grabbed and his storage ring being taken away, it could not be considered a dangerous attack. However, those demigods who on average already had more experience naturally thought more deeply before acting. They were not hasty and wanted to see the situation first. Some even said, it could be that the Mountain King is restricting visitors to his tomb so we can't enter. In such a situation, even having the key is useless. That was what they were worried about. Not being able to enter that tomb, and at the same time also offending Seal, their lives would not be able to be peaceful. That if they could enter the tomb, the opportunity to steal the key would naturally always exist. Seal smiled as no one moved. He tapped Pegasus on the shoulder again, telling him to move again. Yun Ming was quite amazed at the way Seal handled this. His threat was very clear. If it was him who said that, some people would probably criticize him. However, Seal did not get a single criticism. "Prince, there will probably be many hidden moves after this news spreads," Yun Ming said after a while. "Of course, I'm not just talking about this continent, but the other continents as well. I'm sure many will come from the surrounding continents. And there are many things we don't know from outsiders. If it's just people from this continent, their movements can be read by me." "I know." Seal responded with an unconcerned expression. He waved his hand at Yun Ming to stop talking about that. However, Mu Yixue suddenly spoke in a low voice after that. "It's better if you call one elder to be a guard. You know, bad things could happen." Actually, that was also what Seal was thinking, but whether it was Isla or Mu Yueli, both of them clearly wanted to avoid him now. And he wasn't that familiar with the other elders. After a moment of thought, he suddenly remembered Kaya he had met. That woman had shown friendliness to him, so he thought it would be easier if she was the guardian. "Can you contact your senior sister, Kaya?" Seal asked Mu Yixue. The latter was a little surprised that she wanted the woman. "Are you sure?" She couldn't help but ask to be sure because she thought Kaya was a very scary woman, and difficult to control. She was only docile in front of the Ice Goddess. Little did Mu Yixue know that Kaya regarded Seal as the son of the Ice Goddess and respected him as she respected the goddess. "Just tell her that I want her to come," Seal replied. Since she had already said it, Mu Yixue immediately sent a message to her. Of course, she also explained the details that happened here. A short while later, Seal and the others arrived in front of an area surrounded by a beautiful river. Within that area were many buildings that could be said to be a city within a city. Of course, not just anyone could enter as the area belonged to Madame Zhou. Only those who have a relationship with Madame Zhou can enter freely. If other people wanted to live there, they would need to pay a very expensive rent, which wasn't that much of a disadvantage since it was a very safe place to live. And it was also a place filled with pure spiritual energy, so cultivating there could be several times faster. Not far from there is actually a similar area. It was Madame Maya's place. Whether it was Madame Zhou or Madame Maya, both of them were supreme beauties on the Holy Cloud continent. Even now that they had not appeared in public for a long time, one could still hardly find a woman as beautiful as them. It was said that when they were young, many geniuses from other continents came to propose to them. Some were even ready to conquer the entire Holy Cloud continent. Unfortunately, all that was stopped by a young man who would later become the Blue Cloud God. Although he was not yet a god at the time, his talent had already reached such a point that the sons and disciples of the gods were also helpless before him. In the end, Madame Zhou and Madame Maya became his wives. The former gave birth to one son and one daughter while the latter only gave birth to one son for him. Please enter, Prince. Yunming pointed his hand at a bridge that connected the area with the city area. Seal and the others immediately crossed the bridge. Coincidentally, just as they crossed the bridge, a group of people came out of a building similar to a palace. They were led by a middle-aged woman who was so beautiful that it seemed as if the moonlight was coming from her face. Even just her appearance managed to make the air very fragrant and pure. Chapter 75 Madame Zhou. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The woman has white skin that is not too white, more natural. Looking as if she is often at one with nature. Her hair was black, long and straight until it reached her thighs. She was also tall and slim with beautiful curves all over her body. Her waist is very slim while her ass is plump enough to stand out from behind. As for her breasts, they are not too big but not small either, still striking but giving off a strong sense of elegance. With a rather tight long purple dress, she easily makes every man's eyes unable to stop staring at her. Her steps seem to blend in with nature. As her feet wearing high heels landed on the ground, it didn't produce any sound at all, and didn't make any small dust rise into the air. There was only beauty as her legs were exposed slightly through the slit of her dress. Plus, her lips had a slight curve as she showed a faint smile. And most importantly, she is a second-stage demigod. Seal couldn't help but blink a few times as he looked at her. This was a different type compared to Isla and Muyueli. Both of them were also very beautiful middle-aged women, but they were too cold a type. Perhaps it was more suitable to say that they were not yet real women. This one was different. She had a husband and 2 children, her aura as a madam was obvious. Her easy-going personality only adds to her appeal. Mu Ishua looked into Seal's eyes after staring at the woman for a while. His reaction made her unable to resist pinching his waist. Seal, don't tell me you're interested in someone else's wife. I suggest you don't try anything strange, the consequences are too heavy. She said. This was no longer about jealousy, but her concern for him. She would rather Seal play around with the Ice Palace elders than with this woman. Unfortunately, Seal did not respond to her words. Actually, he wasn't sure what he was thinking either. He could not deny that he was fascinated by this woman, something that was quite natural given her beauty. However, even he found it strange to do so with another person's woman, let alone a god's woman. Perhaps it could be said to be outrageous and overreaching. However, it was precisely because it was strange and beyond the limits that he was attracted to it. Everyone agrees that everything that goes beyond the limits will give an indescribable thrill. And the attraction was heightened because he had the assurance of safety and had the ability to rely on for his evil plan even though he did not know whether it would work or not. Thinking of all that made Seal feel like his head was getting full. He ended up shaking his head in a quick motion to get rid of all those thoughts. He thought there was no need to think about it too much. If he really wanted to, just let everything flow, do what he needed to do. Not long after, his entourage and Madame Zhou's entourage finally met. The latter had been staring at him since the beginning, even making observations that seemed detailed. After that, she made a light gesture of respect, which was not too much because with her status she did not have to act like a little person in front of Seal. Your Highness the Ice Prince, welcome to my simple residence. You can rest in this area, there are many nice places you can choose from. She said in a soft and polite voice, truly giving off a virtuous impression. This was the first time Seal had received that level of hospitality from a woman from his 2 lives. He could not help but feel floating. Ha 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 ha, madam, if your residence is simple, what about other people's residences? They probably deserve to be called goat stables. Seal laughed in response. For this friendly woman, he did not mind being friendly as well even though his heart could not discard his ill will. Madame Zhou laughed as she replied, "Of course, no. Compared to your mother's palace where you live, my residence is not even worthy of being called simple." Apparently, she really regarded Seal as the son of the ice goddess. Since Seal didn't mind in the first place, even liked it, he naturally didn't try to explain anything. Then, he answered Madame Zhou's words. "Not really, that palace is very cold. It's more cozy here, it's warm and the people are friendly, I definitely prefer it here." "Ah, if only you were my mother." When she heard that, Mu Yixue couldn't help but open her mouth, wanting to pinch Seal's waist again, but worried that it would make a bad impression in Seal's eyes because she was constantly advising him, whereas before she had already thought of adapting to Seal's every action. Actually, Yunming also opened his mouth, glancing at Seal. What Seal said was more like a compliment to his mother, but somehow he felt uncomfortable. His experience teasing his friends' mothers made him feel that something was wrong. Meanwhile, Madame Zhou pretended to cough. Being the son of the ice goddess is the highest fortune one can have, how could this small and weak me possibly compare to her? You know, I can't even fully help my son in his troubles, so I told him to befriend you in the hope that you would help him," she said. That surprised Seal a little because she was actually being honest, and it was precisely her honesty that made him even more impressed with her. Or perhaps felt respect for her so that his bad intentions were lessened. She was a mother who cared for her son and wanted to do everything for him. At this point, Yunming couldn't help but feel moved, making his jealousy towards Seal for being the son of the ice goddess disappear. "Before choosing a place, how about going to my house first? Didn't Yunming promise to give you all the best in this continent? I've already prepared it," Madame Zhou said again. Seal nodded before dismounting from his horse with Mu Yixue, followed by the other Ice Palace disciples. Mu Yixue seemed to let out a sigh of relief as being hugged by Seal continuously made the sensations within her body constantly change. Chapter 76 Madame Maya, you are listening at novelfull.audio. On top of the tallest building, stood a young woman wearing a long black dress. Her dark black eyes scanned the city below, every detail and every figure, even every new arrival. Fortunately, she deliberately hid the existence of her gaze, or else those who felt it would instantly taste death. Even the demigods would be no different. She was of course Kaya, the third disciple of the ice goddess who had already come here. After receiving the message from Mu Yixue, she did not delay at all because this matter was indeed quite crucial. A powerful figure needed to come to intimidate the enemy who was trying to mess with Seal. Unless the blue cloud god himself came, she could obviously easily become the strongest in this continent. There were no fourth-stage demigods on this continent, the strongest were only third-stage demigods, which were also few in number. For Kaya, even against all of them, she still had the confidence to win. In the city, there wasn't even a third stage. Only the second stage was the strongest, and they were few. Madame Zhou and Madame Maya were one of them. Speaking of Madame Maya, she was currently on the highest floor of her residence that had a tower-like shape. Like Madame Zhou, she was also a middle-aged woman, but she was a Western-style woman with rosy white skin, blue eyes, and slightly curly blonde-brown hair. Her figure was tall and eye-catching, quite similar to Madame Zhou's, except that she was wearing a red off-shoulder dress that was very tight and slightly displayed the top of her breasts. The slit of her dress is also more open so you can see her long legs even when she is not moving. Her eyes were now gazing at Madame Zhou's residence where Seal followed the woman into her house. Over time, Madame Maya's eyes became sharp. She was actually not alone, there was another middle-aged woman beside her who was also beautiful but lacked light compared to her, showing that she was only a servant. Her name was Nora. When she saw Madame Zhou, she gritted her teeth, and said, "This vixen is still as cunning as ever, now she's even approaching a young man. I'm afraid, she'll use cunning tricks to make the Ice Prince continue to do as she asks. After all, the young tend to be deceived by kindness." After saying that, the middle-aged woman looked at Madame Maya. Madam, we must take action, although the Ice Prince is only a young man, but his influence is unquestionable. If he says Yun Ming will get the inheritance, Master might actually choose Yun Ming. The Blue Cloud God actually had a flexible nature. He considered each of his sons to be worthy and have great potential. Whoever of them got the inheritance didn't matter to him. Hence, when one of his sons befriended someone from a larger faction, he could have chosen that son. This was quite good anyway, as the friendship was bound to be beneficial. In the end, they could continue to work together when going on adventures or anything that made their relationship more intimate, so that they could help each other out when there was trouble. Madame Maya responded to Nora's words by waving her hand. Go and tell Yun Xiao to go home, I'll take care of the ones here. Sure. Nora smiled in response, trusting that Madame Maya would solve this problem. Although Nora thought of Madame Zhou as a vixen, she knew that Madame Maya was similar, both cunning women. Both were women filled with ambition. Even their feelings for the Blue Cloud God could not be said to be clear. Some people near Blue Cloud God sometimes said that they were just using him. In truth, their marriage was originally for mutual benefit, where both clans supported the Blue Cloud God, doing everything possible to make his journey to becoming a god easier, and then the Blue Cloud God helped their clan rise to become the strongest on the continent. Unfortunately, this development eventually reached a limit and both clans began to think of ways to develop further. Getting rid of the other clan was naturally the first way to get the Blue Cloud God to focus on supporting only one clan. And central to that was making their clan's son the heir. Of course, between Madame Zhou and Madame Maya, Nora dared to say that Madame Maya was better. That was proven by Yun Zhao's recent progress, which was the result of Madame Maya's work. Actually, Seal was watching them right now. This was what he had been doing since learning that the building on the other side belonged to Madame Maya. Being worried that the woman would become his enemy, so he wanted to know about her first. And the conversation between Nora and Madame Maya couldn't help but make him confused as he glanced at Madame Zhou, who was leading him towards a large dining table in the hall of her house. He wondered if she really was a cunning woman as Nora said, or if she was just saying nonsense to reproach her. Of course, the words cunning or even selfish did not mean someone was despicable. After all, those two things were just the way people struggled in this harsh world. One can only be said to be despicable if they do things that go too far. Even if Madame Zhou is scheming and selfish, it does not take away from the fact that she is a good mother to her children. Unless she commits acts that betray her children. Seal and the others quickly arrived at the dining table. Please sit here, Prince. Madame Zhou invited Seal to take a seat, in a chair that was right next to the host's chair. It was not unusual, Seal sat down without hesitation. After that, Madame Zhou invited Mu Yixue and the other Ice Palace disciples to sit down as well. Each one she treated with respect. Mu Yixue sat next to Seal while Mei Mei sat quite far away, perhaps she didn't want to be too close to Mu Yixue. Chapter 77 Eat. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. A group of maids arrived not long after, each carrying a golden tray with several plates on it. They were also very beautiful, but the presence of the Ice Palace disciples easily made them look like a group of country girls. Because of their feelings of inferiority, they seemed more friendly. However, the maid who managed to deliver the food for Seal continued to smile happily, even boasting to the others. She tried to move as best she could, hoping that Seal would be attracted to her. Unfortunately, she found that Seal didn't even glance at her, making her want to cry right there. Of course, she didn't dare to get angry. She continued to do her job well until she placed the tray she was carrying in front of Seal. There were various dishes on the tray, from roasted corn, grilled meat with soy sauce, warm soup with a fragrant aroma, to a cup filled with dark wine. At first glance, the wine was like ink, one might hesitate to drink it if not for the aroma that seemed to come from another world. That wine is called Eternal Night Wine, Madame Zhou said to Seal with beautifully curved lips. It's not intoxicating, but it can make you sink into enlightenment. If you're practicing a technique, you can instantly master it by drinking that wine. The blue cloud god gave it to me, but I only drank a little because I felt it was too luxurious for my little talent that had already reached its limit. Madame Zhou's way of explaining is truly captivating, making one want to keep hearing her voice. Even the Ice Palace disciples stared at her until she finished speaking. After that, Seal laughed softly. Please don't joke, madam. If your talent is only a little talent, what about the others? Even among these Ice Palace disciples, how many of them can reach your level? Probably only 2 or 3. Mu Yixue and Mei Mei might be able to reach the demigod realm, but the others, Seal had no confidence. Of course, he also felt depressed because he was still only a spiritual king. Madame Zhou responded to Seal's words with a shake of her head. If I were young, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to compete with any of them. My progress to this point is only due to the help of the blue cloud god who gave me many rare resources. She continued to speak honestly, making people's impressions of her even better. Seal inwardly said, but it's because of your beauty that you were able to get all that. That's also part of your ability. Seal chose not to say that so that he wouldn't seem to be teasing her. He chose to use more natural words. Still, it means you're destined for greatness, he said, which made Madame Zhou smile. I am honored to be called great by you, Prince. She replied. Surprisingly enough, when she said that, her leg or rather knee suddenly moved to the side, nudging Seal's knee. It was so fast that no one could see it, but Seal could feel it clearly. How could Seal not be surprised? Although it was natural to make that gesture when joking with someone, but between two people of different ages, it was actually very awkward. Why did she make such a gesture to him? Did it happen spontaneously or was it because she was giving him a signal? Seal couldn't help but stare into her eyes, trying to figure it out. However, her expression was still the same as before. She calmly pointed her right hand at the dishes in front of Seal while saying, "Please eat, Prince." Since he had been told to eat, Seal started eating too. He ate the roasted corn first and then the soup and roast meat. Each of them turned out to be so delicious that Seal's eating speed kept increasing over time. He would eat without any rules if it wasn't for wanting to maintain his aesthetics. And even like that, he was still the fastest to finish. In the end, he was the one who ate the least amount of good food here. Seeing that, Madame Zhou said, "Would you like some more, Prince?" "Don't worry, we have enough supplies." Seal actually felt like wanting more, but of course he wasn't going to do it. He shook his head as he replied, "This is enough, now I want to try this wine." His eyes stared at the wine while his hand reached for the cup. "Unfortunately, I don't happen to have any techniques to learn right now, so if I were to drink it, it would be too much of a waste of this wonderful wine," he added, feeling remorseful about that fact. Madame Zhou was slightly surprised to hear that. "It seems you have already understood all your techniques," she said in a soft voice, making Seal not know whether to laugh or cry. He hadn't expected that she had such a misunderstanding. However, as he looked at her eyes, he did not think that way. Yes, how could she misunderstand? She should have known that he was new to the Ice Palace. It was more likely that she said that in order to make him look good in front of people. At this point, Seal could not help but admit that she was a dream kind of woman, knowing how to maintain a man's dignity. Her level was far above the Ice Goddess and the Elf Queen. Those two women just happened to be given too many boons. Seal could only smile in the end. At the same time, Madame Zhou added, "I happen to also have a collection of various techniques. Are you interested, Prince? You can mention the type of technique you prefer." Oh. Seal was immediately interested when he heard that. "What about a fire technique, do you have one?" asked Seal. "Fire? Of course I have it." Madame Zhou quickly replied, as if she didn't care that Seal was using the power of fire instead of ice. After that, Madame Zhou took out a golden scroll with an astonishing aura where the moon sometimes appeared within the aura. Fire Moon. The words were written on the scroll. Chapter 78 Invitation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This scroll I found from an ancient ruin, so it's not from this era, Madame Zhou said as Seal began to scrutinize the scroll. In response, Seal said, I can feel a deep and boundless power. While saying that, he absorbed the information inside the scroll, which had no barrier at all, so it easily entered his head. After finishing, he was only more and more amazed. Madam, this technique you provided is truly priceless. I am not sure if I can repay your kindness, he said, sounding very sincere because he did say it sincerely. That technique was indeed very extraordinary. It could be an unparalleled attack when combined with the Holy Spirit flame. Seal then returned the scroll to Madame Zhou. However, the latter suddenly pushed the scroll back to him. Prince, please keep it. It is more suitable in the hands of those of you who are serious about studying it, she said. Seal was a little surprised that she had suggested that. For a few moments, he was silent, looking at Madame Zhou uncertainly. Of course, he knew Madame Zhou's purpose in doing all this. However, he thought this woman was indeed too kind. Even if her kindness was for her ambition, she could at least make it all look natural. In the end, Seal chose to keep the scroll in his storage ring because he did not think Madame Zhou should force him to keep the scroll. Please drink the wine, Prince. The woman invited Seal again. Seal nodded, took the cup and brought it to his mouth. He glanced at Mu Yixue and found that she was only focused on eating her own food, as if she didn't care about what he was doing. Perhaps she didn't like the interaction between Seal and Madame Zhou, so she chose to remain silent. Seal didn't care about her thoughts either. The moment the cup arrived in front of him, he started drinking the wine, and was quickly surprised by the sweet and sour taste that was far beyond his expectations. It also had a combination of cold and warm, which when it entered his stomach, seemed to speed up his blood flow. The effect was that he instantly became extremely refreshed and energized, more so than he had ever felt in his life. He drank faster until the cup was completely empty. How are you feeling, Prince? Madame Zhou observed Seal, looking as curious as the others. Since she had only ever drunk a little of the wine, so the effect she felt was also slight. She did not know what the effect would be when drinking 1 cup of the wine. Too incredible, Seal replied, looking at her and smiling. He was not drunk, or rather his mind was completely stable, but it seemed that every function of his body was pushed to the highest point with a very comfortable feeling. Perhaps this could still be considered a hangover, but a high-class hangover. Seal wasn't sure either. To be sure, his brain was now concentrating on understanding the Fire Moon, and it was doing its own process without him trying to think. Even when he wasn't meditating, and his eyes were open while his mouth was chatting with someone else, the process was still happening. And the process was also very fast. I think I need a place to release power, Seal said. He said that because there was indeed energy that needed to be released, as his energy wanted to use that technique. I will take you to the courtyard now, said Madame Zhou. She then enveloped Seal with her spiritual energy and moved, taking Seal with her. In an instant, they appeared in her courtyard. You can use your powers now, Prince, the woman said. Seal jumped into the air and then looked up. At the same time, transparent flames emanated from his body, burning the air around him. It was a sight that shocked Madame Zhou enough that she said, Holy Spirit flame, this might be an extraordinary combination. That made her even more curious about Seal. Shwa. Suddenly above Seal's head, the sky darkened slightly while a full moon appeared between the sky and his head, a moon that somehow emitted extreme heat. The sight was enough to attract the attention of the people in the city. They were surprised by the phenomenon produced by Seal, who was only a spiritual king, making them wonder what technique he was using. The flames on his body then surged upwards, merging with the moon to make it somewhat transparent. The heat emitted by the moon increased very quickly, but of course, that was not the point of the technique. Bang! A loud explosion echoed from the moon. It then spun, so fast that it was difficult to predict its speed. However, it wasn't just spinning, it was also circling Seal at the same speed, just like how the moon circled the earth. Benov calm Seal moved his fingers and soon the moon stopped. It could now move following his commands. Of course, if he wanted to, he could also use the moon as a weapon. When it was used to attack, it could easily destroy the mountain. However, the real point of the fire moon was to blow it up, resulting in an explosion similar to that of the moon. At that point, it would release boundless flames. Perhaps words cannot describe the horror, but when the fire moon actually explodes, one needs 2 lives to stay alive. Seal wasn't planning on using that now because he didn't want anyone to see it. After feeling that he could control the technique perfectly, he withdrew all his strength before descending into the courtyard once more. Only, just when he wanted to approach Madame Zhou, a man suddenly came towards him. It was unknown how he entered Madame Zhou's territory, but the latter only stayed silent with a furrowed forehead. "Your Highness the Ice Prince." The man called out to Seal in a very friendly tone. As Seal looked at him, he handed Seal a golden paper. "This is Madame Maya's invitation for you to witness the battle of the 2 mighty hegemons in her Colosseum tonight. Madame hopes you can come," he said. Chapter 79 Watching You are listening at novelfull.audio. An invitation. Seal, who knew from the start that Madame Maya was also planning something, could not help but be interested. He took the invitation and read it. It probably couldn't be considered an invitation completely because it was full of words that were clearly written by hand, very beautiful and charming. His Highness the Prince, son of the marvelous Ice Goddess. When I see you from afar, I know you will have a future that will thrill, no less than your great mother. I am Maya, a simple woman, would like to meet you, but as you know, it is not appropriate for me to come to Madame Zhou's territory given our poor relationship. If you wish, I hope you can come meet me at my Colosseum on Divine Cloud Road. In return, I will definitely give you whatever you want from me as long as it is within my means. With all those words, it can practically be considered a letter, a humbly written letter. The man who delivered the invitation immediately stepped back slowly, occasionally glancing at Madame Zhou. As he left, Seal finally looked at Madame Zhou. "Om, what do you think, Madame?" Seal asked her. However, Madame Zhou looked confused, or perhaps pretended to be confused. "What do you mean, Prince? If you want to meet Madame Maya, you can meet her as you wish," she said. "Aren't you worried that I will change sides to her?" Seal asked again. This woman needed to be reminded a little so that she wouldn't keep pretending. Unfortunately, she did seem to have exceptional skills in that area. Seal's words did not make her lose her composure. "If that is your choice, Prince, I can do nothing but grieve that my hopes have been dashed," she said. She looked so sad that anyone would feel sorry for her. Seal wondered if she was really a cunning and ambitious woman or an innocent woman who ended up seeming ambitious because of her desire to help her son. It was hard to conclude now. "By the way, madam, why did your knee nudge my knee earlier?" asked Seal, choosing to change the topic, and it did need to be talked about given Madame Zhou's behavior now. Hearing that question, Madame Zhou suddenly frowned. "When?" she apparently asked back, even looking confused. "Don't tell me she's unconscious." Seal wondered, but he quickly discarded the thought. Even if Madame Zhou did it unconsciously, there was no way she would forget about it given her cultivation now. And that made Seal come to another conclusion about her. She was playing around with him. There was no doubt about that. "Ah, looks like I was just daydreaming," Seal said. He chose to stop the conversation because he knew that there would be no end to it. If he wanted to know, it was better to leave, and then watch Madame Zhou secretly. He was sure he would find out a thing or two with that. And that way was more suited to the special skills of his eyes. "Right, madam, I think I'd like to take a break first. The effect of this wine seems to be still long and I want to make good use of it," Seal said. Madame Zhou nodded lightly in response. "Please choose the place you want, Prince. My house also has many rooms, you can choose one there, she said. It was a pleasant offer, but Seal wanted somewhere else for Madame Zhou to feel more free. I'll just go there, he replied, pointing at a tall building. He walked there without waiting for Mu Yixue and the others. When the guards of that building saw him, they immediately welcomed him, ushering him into the best room. Seal quickly arrived at the room. Without locking the door, he jumped onto the bed, lying there while gazing into Madame Zhou's house. The woman had already returned to her home, she was directing the maids to clean up the leftovers on the table and wash the dishes. It seemed that it would still take some time before Seal could see her secret. He naturally did not mind waiting. At the same time, the door to the room opened and Mu Yixue's figure stepped inside. She looked at Seal's face, who was also looking at her, looking like she wanted to know what Seal was thinking. If you need help, you can say so, she said suddenly, which surprised Seal because she had previously seemed to disagree with the things he wanted to do here. Had she changed her mind? Seal wondered briefly but didn't really think about it. He didn't answer either, just told her to come closer. The woman had no qualms about approaching him now even though he was on the mattress. She even sat beside him, causing her scent to fill the air on the mattress. Her beauty truly continued to captivate, making Seal want to pull her. However, Seal wanted to focus on his goal first, so he refrained. He simply moved his head from the pillow to her thigh, making her roll her eyes. Mu Yixue didn't make any comments about his actions, but suddenly, she placed her hand on his forehead. Phew! She sighed, and began to massage his forehead, an action that made Seal's expression become strange as he looked at her. He thought this woman seemed to want to be a good wife now. Unfortunately, he could not stare at her for much longer as he currently saw Madame Zhou walking towards a room that was probably hers. It could not be said to be a luxurious room. Its size was not excessive, neither large nor small. It was also quite simple with a white mattress covered by a silk cloth. There was only one cupboard in the room, containing various books. Next to a window, there was a simple wooden table. Madame Zhou walked over to the desk, sat down behind it, and then opened the drawer, which turned out to contain a book with the word "Diary" on the cover. Chapter 80 Madame Zhou's Diary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 80 Madame Zhou's Diary. Madame Zhou took the diary, placed it on the table while a Cultivation World style pen appeared in her hand. It had a similar shape to the fountain pen on Earth, except that it was made of diamonds with ink inside. After placing the pen between her fingers, Madame Zhou opened the diary. And in fact, Seal had already examined the contents of the diary with his heavenly eyes. What was written inside the diary made his expression change to the point of his mouth opening. I'm lonely. Lan Tian, are all gods just like you? Only concerned with cultivation, and not caring about anything else. Lan Tian, all this time you've regarded me and Maya as objects to bear your children. Other people think I'm just using you, but you've never cared about me either. Everything you do is nothing more than repaying my clan. Lan Tian, although I didn't love you from the start, I hope you can show at least a little affection. If you do, I can definitely start loving you. I want a man who can treat me as a woman. I wish I could part with Lan Tian, but who would dare to snatch a god's woman? What if I cheat on you? No, I won't do that, I'm not a whore like Maya. I have to divorce Lan Tian first if I want to start a relationship with a man. I have to make my son a great cultivator so that one day he can give me my freedom. This is my ambition because I know I can't advance any further with my meager talent. Lan Tian is no longer willing to give me proper resources since he thinks my clan's service to him has already paid off. That damn Maya, how can her son advance so fast? Who is supporting him? Don't tell me that she found a lover out there. While Seal continued to read the contents of Madame Zhou's diary, the latter began to write on a blank page. Ice Prince, he really is a young man different from the others despite his low cultivation. His eyes are as if a pair of suns that can watch over the world from the sky. He is more striking than any young man no matter what kind of talent they are born with. Even with my age now, I have to admit to his charm. If I were younger, I would probably be his biggest fan. Ah, the short chat with him had gotten me so carried away that I accidentally nudged his knee. But that's not strange considering who his mother is, a woman unrivaled in the 7 realms. I wonder who his father is. He must be a hard man to imagine. Lan Tian can probably only stand behind his followers, he. It's just that, he's definitely a naughty man, even showing off excessively. Doesn't he think about the feelings of the young men when they see him riding a winged horse while hugging such a beautiful young lady? Yeah, they do look very romantic. If only my youth was like that, being the lover of a young man like the Ice Prince. Damn, Maya damn, you must be planning something dirty for the prince. What should I do? Maya knew the Ice Prince was a naughty young man, the prince probably wouldn't refuse if she offered him her body. Do I have to do the same? No, that's not possible. I will not do anything dirty in my life. My body will only be given to my husband. But what if the Ice Prince suddenly becomes depraved after he gets Maya's body, and then he forces me to give my body to him if I want him to defend my son? This is a critical issue. If Maya becomes the victor, I'm afraid I'll be destroyed by her. What should I do? Someone, please give me advice. Madame Zhou stopped writing for a while to think. Then, she continued, it would be best if the prince helped me get a divorce. With his help, Lan Tian would definitely not dare to get angry, and I would feel more free to do things after that. Madame Zhou rested her head on the table, looking very hopeful. Seal, who had also read everything Madame Zhou had just written, didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he learned about this woman's story and thoughts. Perhaps her original demeanor was that of an innocent woman, but the life experiences and various situations she had experienced in her life made her a shrewd woman. All in all, she is actually a woman who yearns for love and a truly romantic life. Oh, maybe I can do what she wants, Seal thought. At this point, the thought of not flirting with her was gone from his head. To him, it would be a pity if he didn't fight for Madame Zhou while she was unhappy with the Blue Cloud God. And he thought it wouldn't be difficult to seduce Madame Zhou after knowing her secret. He might be able to tell her to divorce Blue Cloud God and then become his wife. Judging from the situation, the relationship between him and Madame Zhou can be established as long as the latter officially divorces her husband. And compared to Madame Maya, Seal was much more attracted to Madame Zhou, who had a great loyal nature. The former was completely negligible compared to the latter. Seal turned his attention to the city, observing the movements there. It turned out that quite a few had come through the teleportation formation, mostly talking about the tomb of the Mountain King. Some of them even suggested asking Seal to open the tomb immediately. Unfortunately, the idea was immediately rejected because those who had seen Seal threaten people didn't have the courage to force him. The young masters of other factions might still be suppressed when many people united, but it would take the unity of all beings in the realm of life to suppress Seal. Time passed quite quickly. Seal really utilized the wine's effect to cultivate. He searched for various faults in his cultivation to correct. That gave him quite a lot of benefits, as it turned out that there were indeed still many flaws in his cultivation even though the foundation had been repaired. It was true what people said, that cultivation had no limit to perfection, there were always flaws to be found as long as you looked for them. And the rectification of those flaws could naturally increase strength significantly. When Seal finished, the sky had already darkened somewhat, and the atmosphere of the city had also changed in some parts where nightlife had begun. The commotion had become somewhat rare, but the city was much noisier due to the many events. Here, cultivators who had just finished adventuring in dangerous places almost always held large parties. Mu Yixue was still in Seal's room, reading a book at a table. She seemed so focused that she didn't realize that Seal had stood up. She only realized when Seal entered the bathroom, and heard the sound of closing. He took a shower right away, what did he want to do? Mu Ishue couldn't help but wonder because it seemed like Seal wanted to leave immediately. She didn't know about Madame Maya's invitation, so she couldn't guess. Seal apparently showered quite quickly, and he was already dressed when he came out, even very neatly, more neatly than earlier this morning. I want to go for a while, no need to come, you stay here, and wait for me to come back, Seal said to Mu Ishue before the latter could ask. After that, he took a step away. Since Seal had already told her to wait, Mu Ishue could only freeze as she watched his departure. Seal quickly arrived at the courtyard. And he instantly saw Madame Zhou coming out of her house, still wearing the clothes from this afternoon. She seemed to have deliberately come out to see Seal off. However, instead of leaving immediately, Seal walked towards her. Madame Zhou was a little surprised by that. When Seal arrived in front of her, she asked, "Is there anything you need, Prince? Or would you like some people to show you the way to Madame Maya's place?" Her demeanor was almost the same as earlier this afternoon, quite different from when she wrote the diary where she was full of confusion. "No, I can find the place myself," Seal replied. "I'm here to talk to you." He said his purpose. Talk about what? Madame Zhou was confused, and she was even more confused because the way Seal was looking at her was somehow strange. "How about we go somewhere else first so no one hears," Seal replied. Somewhere else. Madame Zhou naturally began to feel that something was wrong because if it was just so that their conversation could not be heard, it was very easy for Madame Zhou. Usually, people only spoke to a quiet place so that others could not see their reactions. Meanwhile, Seal saw the backyard as a good place. He pointed there and said, "Let's go there." And he immediately took a step so that Madame Zhou had no other choice but to follow him.